Campaigners in India have been guesstimating that there are over 2 million victims sold into sex trafficking. Children born to these women, we have absolutely no data. Today, I'm going to share with you my journey of working with these children born in the brothels of red light area of Kamatipura. I started my work with my co-founders in 1986 in Kamatipura, which is located in Mumbai, then known as the largest red light area in Mumbai, in India, and in Asia. What did Kamatipura look like way back in 1986? 14 lanes, each lane having anything between 2 to 3 buildings, each building having anything between 2 to 4 floors, each floor having anything between 2 to 10 brothels, and each brothel having small cubicles, compartments, which I call pigeonholes, literally pigeonholes. Those brothels which didn't have these pigeonholes had beds covered with just curtains on all the sides. In the midst of this red light area stood in the 7th lane a big municipal school, a school run by the local municipal corporation. In 86, there were 5,000 students attending this school, and not even 1% of students were from this red light area, and the school was in the midst of this red light area. What was the life of children born to these prostituted women in this red light area? It was shocking. It was shocking for me, just 23 years old, walking into this red light area. Infants, little infants who could not fend for themselves, were dependent on their mother, would be intoxicated, mildly drugged, and put off to sleep right below the bed on which the mother would service customers. The little older children, say about 4, 5, 6-year-olds, would run errands for the customers who visited these brothels. Errands like getting cigarettes, blue film cassettes, getting condoms, getting liquor for the customers. Slightly older boys would run behind the taxis that came into these lanes in the evening. They ran behind these taxis to lure the customers for their own mother and for the other women in the brothel. Every girl child born in this brothel was groomed by the time she was 10, 11, 12, and by the time she was 14 or 15, sold to the first customer who paid the highest. In 86, in Kamatipura, I think that was the only place in India where the birth of a girl child was welcomed and celebrated. Welcome and celebrated for all the wrong reasons. This girl child was a free, sure, and hassle-free recruit for the perpetrators of the sex trade. She was available for them right there. This was the time, 86 was the time when globally children's rights were being discussed. The UN General Assembly adopted the Convention on the Rights of the Child. Discussion around children's rights prior to the convention and post the convention did not mention a word. There was no discussion about the plight of children born in the red light area. Why is it important that people discussed the children born in the red light area? It was important because every child born there would end up into a vicious cycle of intergenerational trafficking into the sex trade in case of a girl child. And in case of a boy child, he was a sure and free recruit into the allied activities of the sex trade. And that's why it was important when children's rights were being discussed, these children should have been discussed. The UN Convention spoke about broadly 4 rights: right to protection, right to participation, right to survival, and right to development. None of these rights these children enjoyed. There was no safe childhood. As a matter of fact, there was no childhood for these children. When we walked into the brothels, when we walked into the lanes of these red light areas, in the evening, what we saw was horrifying. In the brothels, there were 3 generations together waiting for the customer to come in and decide whether he's going to buy the daughter, who's barely 14 or 15 years, the mother or the grandmother. On the streets, in these 14 lanes, at some point in time in the evening, you'd find these three generations soliciting together. And again, the customer haggling whether he could afford the daughter, the mother, or the grandmother. We decided to intervene. But before we intervene, we also wanted to hear what the mothers had to say. It wasn't easy entering the brothel and interacting with these women, because every time we interacted, we asked a question to the mother, the brothel keeper and the pimp would respond. Eventually, we got there, and eventually we built a rapport with these women, and they opened up. They started telling us about their life, and when we asked them what was the dream, what was their dream for their children, and each and every woman, way back in '86 and today, tells us just one thing: I do not want my child to endure what I have endured. I want my child out of this. And I want a life of dignity for my child. So that was where we began to work. We started our work with these women and started ideating how is it we could help them and the children. The mothers also told us one more thing. They said, we wanted the children, please de-link our children from the red light area. We do not want the negative influences of the red light area for the children. What we want is de-link, move them from the red light area, but do not de-link them from us. We want to be part of our children's journey. What they also wanted was a safe place for their children in the evening. That was the time we came out with this very innovative idea called a night care center. We discussed this with the women, and we said, how about if we were to start a center for their children, where they could come, stay with us in the night. So this was the time we felt we could keep these children and work on their growth and development, work on their protection issues. What the women told us was that this was a great idea, but they wanted the night care center to be very close to the brothels, which meant we needed a place in the red light area. Starting a night care center also meant we needed money. When we approached different people, we were criticized. It wasn't an easy journey for us at all. When we put forth this idea of protecting, working towards helping the children of prostitutes, we were told that no matter what we did with these children, sex runs in their blood. There's no way we would be able to change these children. There were some who told us, prostitutes, they make a lot of money. They are into the sex trade so that they could make easy and quick money. Why should developmental funds be wasted on such frivolous children of such frivolous women? We saw money in the red light area. Believe me, there's big money in the sex industry. But the money goes to the perpetrators of the sex trade, not to this woman. Every time she has a crisis, she has to borrow money from the money lender. So there's no money at all for these women. There were others who criticized us. They said prostitution is a necessary social evil. It's here to stay, it will stay. So who better than these children to replenish the brothels? So why are you trying to break this cycle? It's working so beautifully. When we went to donors and when we went to funders, they asked us for guarantees. They said, if we invest in these children, can you guarantee that these children would not end up in the sex trade? There was absolutely no understanding of trafficking. There was absolutely no understanding of violation of rights there. This wasn't it. We needed the place. So the only place finally we zeroed down was on this municipal school, which was so beautifully located in the midst of the red light area. But people weren't happy allowing women and their children coming and accessing the school. There were people who opposed us, and I still remember one teacher from that municipal school going on a signature campaign to ensure that the local municipal corporation does not give us rooms to start our night care center. But while we had people criticizing us, not trusting us, thinking we were just, trying to be sillily adventurous, there were people who also supported us. And we got our first room in Kamatipura Municipal School to start the night care center. This was the first night care center ever started in any red light area across the globe. Children who were out there in the red light area fending for themselves had a different routine. And we were here creating a different routine for them. They stayed awake till 3, 4 in the morning, and we were telling them, by 8:30, have dinner, watch a little bit of television, and go off to sleep. And they wouldn't sleep by 10. They would stay awake till morning. They were used to eating street food. And we were here giving them balanced diet. We were here trying to tell them what recreation really means. For them, recreation meant something absolutely different than our definition of recreation. So that too was a challenge. Today, we run 4 night care centers across different red light areas. We have many more organizations across India who've set up night care centers because everybody realized that this was a tested model. What we achieved from this night care center was that every child who was admitted into the night care center was immediately enrolled into school. Today, every child, come to Kamatipura, any one of you can come to Kamatipura, and Falkland Road, and Vashi Turbe, and you would find every single child going to school and coming back to our study class in the evening to ensure that they're also learning. Every single child is completing 10 standard. There are children completing 12. They've also completed college education. And some of them have taken their mothers out of the brothels and are staying separately. I'm saying some of them because we lost a lot of mothers in these years to HIV. So we have a lot of children who are also orphans because of their mother's HIV. For us, all this that we did would not have been possible without those people who criticized us and challenged us, and those people who helped us. Our journey of last 31 years for me is still not over. And I'll tell you why I think it's still not over. I thought at some point in time that, it was almost, at least intergenerational trafficking into the sex trade, we had made a dent. Till 3 weeks ago, the Mumbai police conducted a raid in one of the brothels which was linked with a dance bar. And over 14 minor girls were rescued from this particular dance bar. And when we started, my colleagues and I, we started interacting with these girls, they all belong to one particular community from the northern state of India. And while interacting with them, very matter of fact, they tell us, my sister does this, my mother did this, my grandmother did this. This is the customary practice, they said. We all do this. They had normalized exploitation. As a matter of fact, I don't even think they even understood what their rights were. Because for me, you understand exploitation when you understand what your rights are. And these children didn't even understand that they had a right to childhood and not entertain customers. When we went back to the villages where they stay and interacted with different stakeholders, and when I say this different stakeholders, these are stakeholders who are appointed to protect children. And all these stakeholders were telling me just one thing, the same thing that I heard in 1986. They said, Priti, this is customary. There's nothing you can do. It runs in their blood. And that was the time I said, my God, We need many more people to join this work. We need many more groups, many more stakeholders to understand what rights are, what it means to violate somebody's rights. For us in Prerna, it's all about protecting rights of all the underprivileged children, all the invisible children. It's about helping them create choices. It's about helping them walk on the path once they have chosen something for themselves. And it's all about restoring dignity to these invisible children, to these invisible community. And for us in Prerna, it is not the job of just we alone. And we love this proverb which says, it takes a village to raise a child. For us, it was the village. It was the village that comprised of several people who joined us, who supported us, and this is what we saw. And I really believe these are the people we believe that transformation is possible, that there's nothing like running in the blood. All we need to do is come together, collaborate, don't look away, don't be silent. We need to learn to say no to all these things. We need to learn to teach our communities to say no. And we need to break the silence around this, which I call the worst form of exploitation. Thank you so much.